Namaskar. Before I invite my friends to make their creative contributions, I would like to make certain observations. Today, the twin powers of economics and politics are ruling the world. And I venture to say that they are destroying the world also. Why do I say this and have come to this conclusion? Because all the crises in the world are because of the model of development we have adopted. We, the human beings, have taken the nature as the mine of wealth, and we are exploiting it, and thereby digging our own grave. The multidimensional crisis mankind is facing today is because of this negative model of development. Immediately there are certain gains, but ultimately we have no future. As they say, power is a good servant but a bad master. And today the power which we have earned with the help of the mechanism of science and technology has become a bad master. To make our future and our future secured, we shall have to change this equation and make the power a good servant. How to do that? For that, we shall have to change the model of development. From this negative, exploitative model of development, we shall have to bring about a new model of development, the symbiotic model of development in which man and nature have an organic relationship as there is between a mother and a son. Nature is our mother and we are its children. Therefore, we shall have to adopt and evolve a new model of development to bring about a change in the structure of the world itself. In symbiotic model of development, they nourish each other. Son and the mother serve each other. She feeds the child with her milk and gets nourished. Thereby, the son feeds the emotions of the mother, and by the emotional feeding, mother gets nourished. So, this is the kind of revolution we need today in the world for a secure future for mankind and the earth life itself. Today, there are two powers, as I said, economic and political. Man has become a servant and a slave to both of them. In this global structure, the democratic social structure, and in a free nation, and a developed and awakened, enlightened society, the relation between the power and the people is that the power needs to serve the people. In the democratic setup, it is the people who are the supreme masters, and the political leaders as their representatives are meant to serve the people as they are their masters. But unfortunately, we have not yet got freed from the wrong habit of ruling. The delegated power to politicians is negatively used to rule the people. The power is meant to serve the people because people are the masters. So we have to get freed from this wrong habit of ruling. In a free nation like India, their ruling has no place, only service is there. The political leaders and the political structure is meant to serve the people as our supreme masters. So this transformation will have to take place in our political structure. Likewise, in economic system, the means are meant to serve the end. Man is the end and wealth is the means, whereas wrongly man has been made a slave and a means to earn the wealth, the money, with a mechanism of the structure we have been created for ourselves. So this transformation will have to take place in our power structure, whether it is political or economic. The power is meant to serve the people. Man is the ultimate end. And whether it is the political form of power or the economic form of power, the power is meant to serve the ultimate end of mankind. And for this, we shall have to change the relationship between man and nature, man and power. And how to bring about this radical change? The only way we have been discussing for the last 2 days, the spiritual authority, because spiritual authority does not harm, it uplifts with help of love and compassion. Therefore, our spirituality itself must undergo transformation, and it must become capable of overpowering the power, the physical power. When the spiritual power overpowers the power and becomes the master of the power, then power will become the servant and serve mankind. So the whole equation will have to undergo a radical change. So our spirituality itself will have to undergo a transformation from the otherworldly orientation to this worldly commitment spirituality must achieve for itself. I repeat it. Our spirituality today has got the otherworldly orientation, whether it is nirvana or moksha or whatever it is. No, from the other world, the hidden source, the source of creation, we must draw upon that source and inherit energy from that. Not go back to that, but bring that to this world. So we must bring that source to our help. It must energize man and mankind. Then we would be not only become masters of ourselves, but also become the master of the world and the earth. And then we shall use that spiritual power with our own creativity to serve mankind and the earth life. Therefore, we begin with spirituality, this new kind of spirituality, as spiritual sciences call it, will have to undergo a transformation. Therefore, this is a big and super historic challenge before us, before the spiritual authority first of all. So we begin from spiritual transformation to human transformation and ultimately the world life and earth transformation. This is my request to you. You must, as I mentioned yesterday also, we must accept this challenge. This is a challenge before us. And we must develop our spiritual science further and make new strides, new heights of consciousness we should achieve. Then our spirituality would be the maker of masters. It will make man the master, and then the spiritual man will become the master of the physical power, and that power will be made the servant of mankind, servant of earth, and servant of nature. That's my way. That is the radical transformation of the whole existence that the spirit of today calls for. I hope that you will be ready and act like the pioneers of this global revolution. Thank you so much. Now I request my friend. Thank you. How to pronounce your name, sir? Rostam?
Rostam.
Okay, thank you. That's short for me.
Thank you very much for the short introduction. I understand time is very short, so I also will be brief. I'm currently a professor at the University of Macau, China, and I'm really, really happy to be here because after having completed my PhD, I worked for the Austrian Foreign Ministry for 2 years, and then my academic career actually started in India, and so I'm really, really happy to be back here today and share with you basically 25 years of my time as a student, as a practicing lawyer in government, and a professor, now in particular being concerned with trying to improve law, mainly by doing research, but also by trying to give the students, the future practitioners, in our program, for example, the tools, the skills to read the signs of our time and to make, hopefully, have an impact in the future. I will not talk about everything I had prepared initially, but I will try to extract the essence, which is the link between law and language in a way, because language is is not the only, but is one of the important ways by which lawyers, I think, act. And here, in my research of different areas in different places, I saw a pattern arise, which then struck me when I read this sentence by a Swiss linguist and philosopher who said that the mystical experience has in its history with language applied mainly as rhetorical tools, paradox, oxymoron, negation, and similar rhetorical figures of speech. And that was written in 1989. When you compare that with the language of global governance, here by exemplified by James Rosenau in an article of 1995, where he says the prospects for global governance in the 21st century are to discern powerful tensions, profound contradictions, and perplexing paradoxes. In my view, this is pretty much an identical meaning or a very identical wording applied in the language of law, or law and governance, and also mysticism. So why am I talking about that? First, I would like to say in the research, I came across in law very well-known problems of fragmentation in particular, compartmentalization within law and of law with other sciences. Another important thing is overregulation. We are basically drowning in laws and an information glut, and yet because of a constant change and an acceleration of change, we have no longer as lawyers the good ability to guarantee the rule of law in sense of legal predictability and legal certainty, because the only constant we have is change. So very difficult to give certainty here. And this is exemplified by also what I call the global governance paradox, which is basically, on the one hand, we have the United Nations system here on the right, where the WTO, the World Trade Organization, is representing pretty much the economic pillar, and the United Nations system, the rest, political, cultural, etc., etc. But these two systems are not connected. You don't see it here, it's very small, but the WTO is outside the UN system. Although originally it was planned to have an international trade organization within the UN system, but there are reasons why it didn't happen. And nowadays we have what I compare here to the Vienna Opera House, where every year there's a ball and heads of states, director generals of UN, specialized agencies, they meet, they discuss probably most important problems like all the sustainable development goals, but they don't hear each other. They are standing in small groups, and maybe 2 or 3 of them talk to each other, and the whole debate is not heard. So we don't have, like a chicken and egg problem, no global platform on which to deliberate of how to establish a global platform for deliberations in the future. So how do we get one when we don't have the other? Paradox. And here there's an answer in a book, which I think the title is very accurate. It says, theorizing the global legal order, because we can only theorize about it because we don't have one. We have an international law, we have a systemic chaos of it in a way, fragmentation and all the problems I briefly mentioned. So one way, that they suggest to overcome this problem, this paradox, global governance paradox, is to find a common language. Not a lingua franca, like one English or Chinese, but a common understanding. And I think this is the problem, that we very often apply the same concepts, but we completely attach a different meaning to them. And in this respect, that brings me to the relation in particular between language and law. There was an article in the 50s called Essentially Contested Concepts by Walter B. Galli, which is very useful because he points out that we use terms like art. We all agree art exists, art is important, but then we may agree that Da Vinci is an artist, but maybe other painters like Yves Klein, who's just blue, I can do that, are not artists or something. So there's in the meantime a huge amount of literature using all these concepts, like from democracy, rule of law, art, sports, everything is essentially contested. And this is also reflected in the book, which I here put the quote, that contest is a part of our life. We are brought up in this sense of contesting, of competing. I have to be better than you, etc. And this goes from war to games, work and play, and in particular in law. The law is very much based on this contestation and disputes, in a way. And this is also interesting. The Indian poet Tagore had a quote here, like that he reduces this, or I think seeks and finds the origin in ancient Greece, especially I would say maybe Aristotle's logic, exclusive logic of it's either this or it's that. It cannot be both and, which is very often what we hear, especially when I'm in China, being opposed to the Chinese or Asian thinking, which is more accustomed to fuzzy logic. It can be both and. And this is a very important problem for law, because law is very much built on this dualistic thinking of exclusive logic. It's either legal or illegal. You're right or wrong. It's valid or void, or guilty or innocent. But if someone is guilty and innocent at the same time, lawyers get a headache and have a problem. So, but something is happening in this world right now, and I think we are shifting from essentially contested concepts to a language of essentially oxymoronic concepts, which I've published in an article in 2013. If you want to know more about it, you can, I can give you the article. But basically, it summarizes the oxymoron, enantiosis, and paradox into this category of oxymoronic concepts, because linguists are not clear what is exactly an oxymoron. But basically, an oxymoron, do you know what the etymological origin of it is? I always ask my students, can you say something smart and stupid at the same time? And then they look at me, and then I say, I do it all the time. Because I constantly invoke oxymoron. And an oxymoron is smart and stupid. Moros, I think the English moron is a reflection of that. But then there are also like subcategories, like using an adjective and a noun, not just two nouns of opposite meanings merged into one. And paradox can be a whole story. And here you see oxymoron, something smart and stupid, or an ignorant savant, or a Socratic term of I know that I know nothing. I've summarized them all for the sake of simplicity, but the oxymoron was by linguists called the show-off among them, because it is the closest you can bring two opposite concepts, nouns, together, usually in a single word like oxymoron itself. And then I looked at the arts, mysticism is very familiar with it. Shakespeare, music, pianoforte, loud and silent. All these concepts are very well known there. But science, it's already problematic, because science too is supposed to give us clear answers. It's right or wrong. It's a theory or it's a wrong theory in a way. But yet, physics, the hard science, also delivers more and more terms which are completely uncertain. Uncertainty principle is one. Space-time, black light, constant change, all these are terms from the field of physics. Economics, full of it. Advertising uses it all the time. We are now prosumers. We produce and consume, but Facebook gets paid, for example. You don't see any money for it. Politics, globalization, United Nations, sustainable development. All these are oxymoronic terms in a way. And here are some examples from advertising or sports or the arts, etc. They're all, in a way, oxymoron. And this is, again, a problem for law, because I also did research in legal databases, and I found in the US alone about 300-400 cases where judges used certain terms and said they are oxymoron. Like pure law is an oxymoron, because pure law without context cannot be law, for example. Intellectual property, we use property laws to some laws designed for tangible things to protect intangible things, and many more. Here you see some examples. I can give you all the cases if you need. So basically, they seem to be everywhere. And I think this has luckily been also summarized by Narinder Kapoor, a neuroscientist, where he says they're everywhere, from all the different sciences, biology, law, physics, the arts, they're everywhere. And they are often used where our knowledge is insufficient, deficient. And at the same time, they are indicators of important paradigm shifts that are going to happen. They're harbingers of some kind of future trend. So basically, what does that mean in the future? I think we can apply that to different new areas of cooperation in law. I've here in a book that I've recently edited with 2 colleagues, where about the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, where also very often their diversity is being said to pose an obstacle for their successful cooperation. And we try to show that precisely that BRICS is an enantiosis, a kind of unity in diversity, which can actually create a lot of positive things, and it already does visibly. Basically, I think what we can see is when law understands the power of language, and the language changes, it's time for law to change, and then maybe we can actually bring about the changes we desire. And in a way, I also say in the BRICS book that the best way of, in a way, divining the future is to create it. And I think in this time of fast living, acceleration of change, this brings a lot of uncertainty, but it also gives a great possibility for us to actually implement the changes and realize them, because we don't have to wait that long. So this is very interesting, and John Lennon was mentioned before. I also like a term he used in one of his songs, which is instant karma. I think it's also is a kind of acceleration of the process, leading to something exciting. And what that is, and I could talk much more. I will have a book coming out in June, and I speculate there much more, almost unscientifically, I fear. But today I don't have time to discuss that. I hope you just keep in mind oxymora, and whenever you see them, they, I think, exercise an interesting effect that once you know the term, you will discover more and more, and you will see that they're everywhere, and then gradually, I hope it works in a way that it complements our thinking in terms of making it more holistic, that opposites are not necessarily wrong or because they are contradictory, they can actually turn out to be true. So thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy if there are any questions. Thank you.
Now I invite my friend, Dr. Arvind Singh, Chancellor of Noida International University.
Let me commence by extending my profound gratitude to OP Jindal University, Professor Dr. Gupta, for considering me worthy of this intellectual exercise. At the same time, I extend my jubilant greetings to the great polymath and the most spiritual soul I have ever met, Dr. Vikram Singh sir, sitting right there, and to all the honorable participants and members embellishing this august gathering. The subject matter of this conversation, spiritualism and politics, is indeed, does invite great interest and curiosity, and is quite relevant when one relates it with observation and study of existing patterns and political systems. Today, political leadership is on decline all over the globe, and spiritualism is going down the slippery slope. And if we have paid attention to recent examples, if we have paid attention to the recent examples of bankruptcy in political leadership cutting across United States or Philippines or even Russia, long-standing, but it does still exist, North Korea, or if we look at the event of Brexit, or if we look at the racial persecution in Myanmar, or we look at humanitarian crisis in Syria, in Iraq, or political crisis in Middle East, or if we look at the prevalent and widespread corruption in African states, and many such patterns all over the globe. And I would also not shy away from including our country in this debate, we see such rage, such fury all around us. We see violence, friction in the society on religious lines, on political lines, on geographic lines, casteist lines. And we see great intolerance and disrespect for different opinions or ideas. These are trends which indicate that a very depraved, hollow, propagandist, and extremist political structures are on rise. And well-established codes and standards of morality are in free fall. And hence the conversation, hence this very topic acquires immense significance. And it is the fusion of politics and spirituality, which is not only very important, but also it is quite urgent. What I can deduce from this is that high quality political leadership is directly proportional to high spiritual quotient. And hence, the subject is very important. For me, spiritualism is a concept of self-realization. It's about exploring the inner weakness. It's about ironing out our faults and doubts. It's about finding our inner strength. Spiritualism is also about venturing outside the realm of self, to explore, to study the patterns and belief systems in the outer world, with a motive to acquire a perfect equilibrium between the inner world and outside world. And with one motive, that is to know, that is to acquire tools to see why is this thus and what is the reason of this thusness. Why is right, right, and why is wrong, wrong. Spiritualism is not about being religious. It is about being open-minded. It is about having spirit of inquiry. It's about having great respect for contrasting ideas. It's about humility. It's about generosity. It's about detachment. At the same time, it's about selfless service. And we must also learn to distinguish between true spiritual movement and charlatans who preach and misguide wider section of seekers onto the wrong path of fundamentalism, path of superstition. It is superstition which has shackled the society from being progressive and advanced. And superstition is the nutrition for dogmas which exist from darker ages. The world has changed for good, and it is time that our belief systems also evolve and develop to capitalize on the advancements in the field of science and technology. So it is important that we must do away, or we must replace demagoguery, bigotry, and superstition with thirst for true knowledge, self-realization, and character building. I don't have much time, so I would like to share now what I think about politics and its power to change the world for better or worse, whichever the case might be. And it's no hidden secret that we do already experience the worst part all around us. So let me just focus on the better part. Politics as it stands today is outrightly Machiavellian. It's cruel and unforgiving. Spin doctors, devil's advocates, ruthless managers, muscle power, financial power. That is what forms the key components of politics today. And it is difficult to imagine politics without these traits, which are in absolute opposition of spiritual values. So hence, it is important for the world to redefine the concept of politics, to reinvent the meaning of politics and center it around the reason for which politics came into existence. And the reason is simple: to serve and for the welfare. So I would like to say, when you distill politics from the blend of cunningness and corrupt ambitions, we reach a platform where we can serve and where we can find solution to the problems around us. And it is at this place the path of public service and the path of selfless service propagated by spiritualism reach a point of intersection. And it is at this intersection you cannot point a difference between a politician or a public servant or a bishop or a father or a pontiff or a saint or someone who is devoted to selfless service. There is no difference at all. Believe it. Any politician who is honest, who is committed, and politics is a lot of hard work. Imagine one great idea, one policy, one decision taken in all earnestness can change life of millions of people in trouble and give them hope for a promising future. And that's great, a great amount of work. Hence, we can equate a politician who is honest, or a saint, or a pontiff, or a bishop. So that is my argument. And I would like to say that a spiritual politician is someone who is rational, who has an open mind, who is honest, who is a debater, who is a free thinker, and who greatly respects difference in opinion, and who is open to criticism. So I would like to rest my case here and say that spiritual politics is the need of the day. And spiritual politician is someone who has the capacity to take tough calls in the face of extreme adversity. He is someone who stands for true justice, even if millions of people oppose him. And he is someone who upholds the evolution and development of institution above himself or herself, rather than damaging them, demolishing them, uprooting institutions for personal safety, personal gain, comfort, or personal ambition. That's a true politician. That's a true public servant. And I think politicians like Abraham Lincoln, Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, these are true ambassadors of this kind of fusion. So, lastly, and most importantly, when corruption reigns, when mob culture is the rule of the day, when crime against women becomes a fashion, when children beg on streets instead of learning on playing grounds, when justice is denied or delayed, and when systemic apathy and arrogance sits on our throne, we can deduce that the political system has failed us. When corruption, poverty, lawlessness, sense of insecurity, and fear from power prevails, we can say that every tenet of spiritual values have been annihilated, or spiritualism annihilated. Hence, we must practice spiritualism, imbibe those virtues to offer a better future for billions in existence and for billions to come. And political welfare or public service should transcend all territorial boundaries like spiritualism. which extends its benefit to the human race all around the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, this great fusion of public service and spiritualism only offers a cure and a panacea to all the chaos and crisis which surrounds human race, and offers a promise for a better future. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I would like to rest my case with lines of Abraham Lincoln.
Thank you.
I'm not, just a second please. I would like to end with the lines of Abraham Lincoln. I'm not bound to win, I'm bound to be true. I'm not bound to succeed, I'm bound to live by the light I have. I will always stand with anybody who stands right, and will stand with him while he is right, and will part with him when he goes wrong. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Before I invite another friend of mine, I would request Madam Garima Jain to kindly come forward. Madam Garima Jain. Our next speaker is Shri V. Adi Narayanan, founder of Anadi Foundation. I would request him to please first introduce his foundation and then make his contribution. Thank you.
Namaste. I bow down to the divine in all. My name is Adi Narayanan, and Anadi, the foundation that I'm a founder of, Anadi Foundation. Anadi means that which is beyond Adi and Anta. Adi is beginning and Anta is end. That which is beyond beginning and end is called spiritual. That which is bound within a beginning and an end is considered derivative of the spiritual, which is all. So at Anadi Foundation, we aspire to inspire especially youth along spiritual lines, so that they can be grounded in spiritual realization and act vigorously towards Loka Sangraha. Loka Sangraha means the well-being of all. So I had the opportunity of spending more than 100 days in Mauna Tapasya, as I wanted to find out for myself. Now here we are here to discuss about global concerns, genuine concerns, so many challenges that affect the world right now. So I wanted to experiment and find out for myself, how do I approach it? And hence, Tapasya, Mauna Tapasya can also be looked at as a first-person research into consciousness. Here I will share my findings with you all, what I discovered for myself, and how it is not anything new or original. How it has always been a continuum. The concerns that we have now are not new in nature. They are age-old. And how we can draw from insights from our ancients, look at them for inspiration and also practical solutions And that can inspire us to find the solutions for our current concerns and go out into the future more confidently. Valmiki Ramayana describes Ayodhya as 3 yojanas in width and 12 yojanas in length. 1 yojana is 13 kilometers. A simple math would reveal the area of Ayodhya is more than 6,000 square kilometers. And current New Delhi is about 1,800 square kilometers. You can imagine almost more than 3 times the size of New Delhi and the kind of problems and concerns it would have had as a city-state. And how Sri Rama, even now people talk of Ramarajya exactly for this, because he's supposed to have, in Valmiki Ramayana, there's a description of how he was a master of the Adi Daivika, natural calamities, and Adi Bhautika, social processes, so that there was peace from natural calamities and from social disturbances. So these are processes, these are sciences that have been looked into. Even now with a city like, or any city in the world, faces challenges of law and order, of poverty, of nutrition, of smog. I don't belong to New Delhi, so this is a thing for me. Pollution. So these all need to be handled. There, how do we handle it practically? That's where the key question lies. Towards that, the first thing is to resolve our perspective. As it's beautifully put, alternative perspectives. Where do we miss out on the perspectives? See, there science can inform us, and there spiritual sciences can inform us better. If we look at it, see, what is the relationship I discovered for myself, as well as I got corroboration from current sciences. What is the relationship between me and this plant here, if it's not plastic, no? Or the plants outside? Right now, evolutionary biology tells us that more than 95% of my DNA I share with this plant. More than 95% of my DNA I share with even a bacteria. Not just human beings, okay? More than 95% of the DNA I share with a stray dog there. And hence, next time we go out, we need to look at it as a distant relative, you know? Not just any stray dog. So we are not talking of just human society, but a concrete relationship, which right now is not visible because of our limited perspective. And hence, expanding that perspective becomes very critical. So this is called common ancestry, 3.5 billion years back, and how life on Earth evolved to what it is now, right? Along multiple lines, individually and collectively, co-evolved. But in the Indic tradition, I discovered that it goes even further to a universal ancestry. For example, we are informed in the Mahabharata and Ramayana as to how all life forms evolved from Brahmaji. First mind-born, first Ayonija. Ayonija means not through a womb, and then Yonija, then from a womb. And then in different ways, it evolved. It is clearly mentioned in these terms. And there, as it evolved, political science or Niti Shastra came into play to have order in this evolution, so that there is proper mutual relationships guided along spiritual lines. Because without understanding our interrelatedness in a concrete way, our actions are bound to harm others. And hence, ahimsa was considered param dharma. Ahimsa. Because actually we have co-evolved. We have common ancestry. And not just of this loka, as it's explained, not just of Bhuloka, but the whole universe of all beings everywhere. And now science is taking us there where there is exoplanet discovery. So much research is going on where there is exoplanet discovery. And there, how do we use this spiritual understanding to guide our actions? Niti, or the science of politics, it's mentioned that it came out from Brahmaji. Or in some other ancient civilization, it would be some other name, but essentially it points us down into history. And there, to guide our actions now, it becomes important to distinguish between what is good and what is not so good. But for that, it becomes very critical to trace our evolution, which sets the context for discovering what is right now good and what is not so, and how it will impact us into the future. Without that, it is myopic or it is short-sighted at best, the policies and whatever actions happen. And hence, good and bad, when we see it with respect to our evolutionary processes, with respect to our ancient traditions, that gives us a concrete context to evaluate current decisions that lead to global peace, harmony, lack of, poverty or hunger, and that would be truly sustainable peace, which is what dharma is. Dhra means to sustain. A sustainable peace, a sustainable development is what all of us aspire for. Towards that, if we inform ourselves better along the evolutionary trajectory that we have taken and what decisions have led to what consequences, that becomes worthwhile researching into and bringing those insights into contemporary academic research can guide us better along future policy directions that we take as humanity. So thank you. Namaste.
I'm sorry to say that I have no time left for you because the time given. Question? Is there time? Okay. How much? Okay. Then give me the argument. Okay. Yes, the convener lady has already informed that she has extended my time, so you are invited to ask questions.
Any questions?
You have no questions? Okay. Yes, come on.
Yes, I have a question for Rostam Neuwirth. It is very interesting to think in terms of common language, as you so eloquently exposed in your paper. You know what I thought when I was hearing this? I thought, okay, a common language. In what language? You see what I mean? So I'm sure you can understand the way of the language we should use. Of course, we can speak to each other in English or another language, but how shall we come to common elements, concepts, or even through oxymorons? Maybe it is possible we get there, but I would like to hear some more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just briefly, I think there are two ways. One that led me
Yes, please.
to believe in this statement from the book, Finding a Common Language. First is, I think George Bernard Shaw said that America and Britain are divided by a common language, so most misunderstandings actually probably happen within the same language. And that's why I think the first thing is to understand contradictions, different understanding that doesn't need language as such. And the third element is, which I elaborate more in my book, because I didn't have time. I think languages evolve, and we evolve with them biologically. I think this is part of another oxymoron, kind of cognitive genetics or something. And I think we will probably develop new organs. We will have to, I think, because we heard this morning, we either mutate and adapt or we go extinct. So I hope for the first, and I think we probably will awaken new sense organs. That's why I call it synesthesia here. I didn't have time to go into that. But I think that will allow us to communicate even without using language in one way. But that's a very future perspective, which I think area to explore. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think this brings an end to a wonderful panel, the last panel that we had, and also so many panels that we have had in the last 2 days. So I really want to thank all of you, and I also wanted to request again Swami Om Purna Swatantra to please present a small token of appreciation for our delegates who have given such brilliant speeches.